So in the second part of this module, we're going to look at market data. So what is market data? We talked about market kind of briefly in the last presentation on commercialization, and I said that you had to know your market, but where do you get that data? Where do you derive those results from? How do you know if you have the right data? So when we talk about markets, there's one thing to keep in mind is that when you look at a market, typically you'll do a market based on three things: the TAM, the SAM, and the SOM. So TAM is total available market. It's just how many people there are in the world, essentially. How many people could you potentially sell this to with unlimited resources, unlimited needs, unlimited wants, unlimited everything. Now, SAM is how many people can you reliably reach in your geographic region? So how many people are in your state, your country, even your city if you provide a service? So how many people can you reliably reach? And then the SOM is how many people would actually buy this? How many people have a value proposition or a need that you can address? So when you look at that market data, it's really good to have, that total available market, that thought, that idea of this is how many wheelbarrows are sold across the nation every single year. But what makes your wheelbarrow different? How many people can you actually sell that to? How many people are within an area you can deliver that product to? And how many people want your new wheelbarrow? Because when you put together a proposal package, you're going to have that segmentation of market data. If you tell them that you're going to capture 10% of a $40 billion market within 3 years, you're going to get laughed out of the room because that doesn't happen. It's a huge market. There's already a lot of players in it, probably already at saturation. It's probably also something that it would be hard to get production lines set up to produce 40 million units a year. So you kind of have to keep those factors in mind when you talk about your market. And also look at these as goals. So your SOM is, where can you be in 5 years? Your SAM is, where can you be in 10 or 15 years? And that TAM is, where can you be in 20 years, 25 years, 50 years? It is that progression and growth and how you continue to move forward. But probably getting a little bit too ahead of ourselves here, because when it comes to your proposal package, particularly in a phase one, you don't have to have these numbers down pat. You don't have to have, the exact number of people in the United States that would buy a glaucoma treatment. You just have to know a realistic number, because market information is going to be a fuzzy a lot of times. That math is just not going to kind of work out. You're going to have some estimations and some general ideas. Just having a best estimate guess is totally fine, because kind of at this point, that's really what you're operating under. When you talk about why your innovation matters, why is it revolutionary, what are you going to do? A lot of times those are your best estimate anyways. You don't have this exact information on how it's going to work. You don't have the exact information on why it's feasible. Frankly, if you did, you'd already be at a phase 2 area. So it's fine to have some estimations, it's fine to have some fuzzy math, but just make sure they're justified. Just make sure they're grounded in reality, and there's something you can point towards and say, well, here's what I found, and I extrapolated from this, here's how I extrapolated, and here's why I extrapolated. And then, where do you go? There's a lot of resources you can go to find this info. Places like marketresearch.com, stadia.com, IBIS World, those will give you a really great overview. But one thing to kind of pay attention to is most of these market reports you're going to have to pay for. So, particularly for like a phase 1 where it's a small amount of money over a short time period to look at the feasibility, Even something like a Google result of the abstract can give you enough data to know what that market looks like. It's really not worth it to pay for a $5,000 to $10,000 marketing report when you don't know if the idea is going to work or if it's feasible. So kind of keep that in mind. But let's go through a quick exercise here on how do you link market data to a need. So these are actual numbers for the most part that were pulled. Some of these are very fuzzy math, but it'll show how we get there. For someone like NSF that wants some very in-depth market information. So let's say I was making a new evaporative cooler. Well, first I would find out, well, what's the global market for evaporative cooling, which was $6.07 billion in 2019. But that's just the total available market. It's not who I can actually reliably sell this to. So who can I reliably sell this to? Well, that'd probably be the US market. So the US market for evaporative cooling was $1.5 billion in 2019. But still, is that the open market for me? Is that the operational market? Or is that what I can obtain? Probably not, because I need to be within a certain geographic region. Evaporative coolers are heavy. You can't be, life flighting these out to upper New York when I'm in the regional Southwest. So, residential is a small portion of that. I'm not going to be making it for commercial enterprises either. So then I look at residential, and then I look at the Southwest. So in New Mexico, households can use up to 12,000 gallons of water per year. Low flow and high efficient transfer system cuts that water usage by 50%. In Albuquerque, 3.2 billion gallons of water were used in the summer to run residential and commercial swamp coolers in 2002. So I can make some guesses, I can extrapolate my information, and I'm going to say that, in a year, I can save 1.6 billion gallons of water in a single city. So that's probably not a great example for someone like NSF because it is stratiated so far down that it doesn't really show what I can do. It doesn't really talk to a market need, but this is the impact I know I can have. Just by taking some information, Googling some results, and extrapolating from there. A lot of times, this kind of level of just talking it through, figuring out, and discussing how you figured it out can be great for a proposal package. And when you're going through this, you should also try and do some customer discovery. So, customer discovery is really finding the people that are going to buy this and, why they're going to buy it. It's really that kind of validation. You think people are going to buy it because of X. Well, go out there and talk to them. Do they buy solutions like this? Is X even a problem for them? Is it a need that they have to address? Because that kind of stuff is going to figure into your market data, creating that product, based on a need, and defining those actual values and those things that drive people to that value proposition. Why do they need it? What's important about this? And if you can't get out there and talk to people during that proposal process, Google some results. Go on some review websites. Look at some message boards. See what product out there do you think is in a same space that you're in, might be a competitor. What are they griping about with it? What doesn't it do that they need it to do? That shows you how you need to create something. Because at the end of the day, creating something and not speaking towards a need leads to a failure. Here's some famous ones. It didn't cripple the businesses that were behind these, but it did kind of leave them high and dry because they created something that they thought the customer needed without going out there and talking to the customer. That is the easiest way to create a product that might even sink your company because nobody wants it, nobody's going to buy it, it doesn't address a market need, it doesn't address a pain point, then there's no value proposition for that customer, or a lot of times for any customer. And that's kind of one of the other things that makes entrepreneurship important, is kind of finding those needs, finding those values, mapping your product to it, mapping your product to what's going to drive a customer to it. Because you need to be able to fail fast. If there is no customer, you need to change the product. If there's a customer but not a value statement, then there really is no customer. There's nothing that's going to drive them to the table to make that purchase, and for you to wrestle that purchasing power and purchasing decision away from somebody else. It is that square peg, round hole fallacy. You're not going to be able to hammer it through. So know, what is it about what you're creating that's important to a customer? Why is it important for that market? What is that value proposition? And how are you going to answer that value proposition? When you're creating your commercialization section of these proposals, you're going to at least have some high-level guesses at that, and some high-level information about why you think you know what you know, why you think you know what you don't know, and why it doesn't matter what you don't know, because you can answer a need, you can address a pain point, and you can bring value to that market. So if you do get a chance to go out and do some customer discovery, though, talk to some people, the best thing you can do is kind of just sit back and listen. What is keeping them up at night? What is the thing that they face the most, that they go, oh man, I wish I could solve this? What are those pain points that they don't even realize can be solved? The example I gave earlier was a great one. Those companies were willing to lose $150,000 a year. That was not a pain point to them anymore, because they said, well, this is something that is just the way it is. It can't be solved. Well, try to change their mind. Why don't they think it can be solved? What else drives them to that decision? What else drives them to, okay, this can't be solved, I'm just going to have to live with it? What are those ancillary things that they're not telling you? Because at the end of the day, if there is not that thing that you can convince them of, where you go, I can solve this issue for you, this is valuable to you, there's no value proposition that's going to drive it. Because if there is no value proposition, remember, there is no customer. There's not that thing that's going to make them go, wow, I didn't really even realize I needed this. I have to go out and buy 4 of these, or whatever that looks like. Value propositions are tied to a very specific customer. You can't lump everybody in. Getting back to our Tam Sam song example. Everybody in the world is not your customer. Even, the largest swath you have, those customers can be different, and they can value something for different reasons. So the home gardener that's out there buying a pair of hedge trimmers is probably buying them for a different reason than a landscape company. They need them to do a different thing. They need them arranged in a different way. Just like hedge trimmers aren't built the same, customers aren't built the same. They're going to have different values. They're going to want different things. They're going to have different needs that need to be addressed. And be remiss if we didn't kind of talk about this, but when you're collecting this data, when you're figuring stuff out, when you're talking to customers, be ready to have to pivot based on the data. You might have to even do that when you're looking at the feasibility, when you're looking at the technology. There might be an experiment you do where you go, well, that didn't work out, but based on the results, I can make this conclusion and I can change this. I can address this a different way. I can pivot it. A lot of times when you're creating a product, you're going to have to do that too. A lot of people don't really remember this, but Babe Ruth held the home run record until 2007. He also held the strikeout record until 1964. He held both of those records at the same time for a number of years. He didn't get up and hit a home run in every bat, but people remember his home runs. They don't remember his strikeouts. And that's what you need to do. You're going to get up there and you're going to hit some home runs. And you're also going to get up there and, man, you're going to whiff hard. But you can't let those whiffs hold you down. You have to get back up at the plate and take another crack and hopefully hit a home run this time. Because pivoting doesn't mean that you just completely stop and erase everything and go, well, that's, 6 months, 12 months, 18 months down the drain. There's lessons you learn from that. There's things you can take away. And when you're putting together one of these proposal packages, you can actually address that. You can say, here's what we learned, here's how we learned it, here's how this is informing us as we move forward. That's really why this stuff is so vital to do. Even if you're just going to take a crack at these programs, even if you're just going to, try and approach a phase one, what is it about what you have that makes people engaged and interested? And track some of that information down. All it's going to do is create a stronger proposal package in the future. So I realized that covered a lot of kind of different areas and didn't really focus so much on just where do you find market data, but we did encapsulate what is important about market data. What else do you need to find? What else do you need to figure out? Because kind of at the heart of it, everything we talked about is your market data. Your market data does include, the size. It includes the saturation. It includes the competition. It includes the price. It includes that value proposition. It includes that single customer, that multiple customer. It includes how you're going to pivot in the future. What kind of upgrades are you going to make? Is this a static product, or is this something people continue to buy and buy and buy again? And depending on which way you approach that, why does that matter? Why does that matter for the future of your business and being commercially successful?